The story of Jack Ma, the teacher who built an empire. Jack Ma was born on September 10, 1964, in Hangzhou, China. This was a time when the country was still recovering from decades of turmoil and upheaval. The year he entered the world was marked by significant historical events that would shape the nation he would one day help transform. China was in the midst of the Cultural Revolution, a period that began in 1966 and would last until 1976. This was a time of political chaos, economic stagnation, and social upheaval that affected every aspect of Chinese life. The world Jack Ma was born into was vastly different from the one he would later help create. In 1964, China was largely closed off from the rest of the world. The economy was centrally planned and controlled by the state. Private enterprise was virtually non-existent. The concept of entrepreneurship was not just discouraged but actively suppressed. Technology was primitive by modern standards. There was no internet, no personal computers, and certainly no e-commerce. Communication was limited and slow. Information was controlled by the government. The idea that a Chinese citizen could build a global technology company worth hundreds of billions of dollars would have seemed impossible, even absurd. Hangzhou, where Jack Ma grew up, was a beautiful city known for its Westlake and rich cultural heritage. However, during his childhood, the city, like the rest of China, was struggling with poverty and limited opportunities. The Cultural Revolution had disrupted education systems across the country. Schools were closed or operating in chaos. Traditional learning was condemned as bourgeois. Young people were sent to the countryside for re-education through manual labor. The intellectual and economic development of an entire generation was stunted. Jack Ma's family background was modest and typical of many Chinese families at the time. His parents were traditional Chinese musicians and storytellers. They performed pingtan, a form of storytelling and ballad singing in the Suzhou dialect. This was not a lucrative profession, and the family struggled financially. His father, Ma Laifa, and his mother raised Jack and his two siblings in a small house in Hangzhou. Despite their limited means, his parents valued education and culture, instilling in their children a love for learning and an appreciation for traditional arts. The family's socio-economic status was working class, firmly in the lower middle class of Chinese society at the time. They lived in a crowded neighborhood where resources were scarce and life was challenging. Jack Ma would later describe his childhood as difficult, marked by poverty and struggle. However, these early experiences of hardship would prove formative, teaching him resilience, determination, and the value of perseverance in the face of obstacles. One of the most significant aspects of Jack Ma's childhood was his early fascination with the English language. This interest began when he was around 9 years old, sparked by a chance encounter that would change the trajectory of his life. At that time, China was beginning to open up to the outside world, albeit slowly and cautiously. President Nixon's historic visit to China in 1972 had marked the beginning of a thaw in relations between China and the West. As a result, tourists began trickling into China, and Hangzhou, with its famous Westlake, became a popular destination. Young Jack Ma began riding his bicycle to the Hangzhou Hotel every morning to offer free tours to foreign visitors in exchange for English lessons. For 9 years, from age 9 to 18, he would wake up early and ride 40 minutes to the hotel to practice English with tourists. This dedication was extraordinary, especially for a child. Most of his peers were focused on traditional Chinese education, memorizing texts and preparing for exams. But Jack Ma was different. He was driven by curiosity about the outside world and a desire to connect with people from different cultures. These conversations with foreigners were transformative. They opened his eyes to a world beyond China, a world of different ideas, different ways of thinking, and different possibilities. The tourists told him about life in America, Europe, and other parts of the world. They shared their perspectives on business, freedom, and opportunity. This exposure gave Jack Ma a global mindset long before globalization became a buzzword in China. It taught him to think differently, to question assumptions, and to imagine possibilities that his peers could not. One particularly meaningful relationship from this period was with a family from Australia, the Morleys. Ken Morley and his family became pen pals with Jack Ma, and this relationship would last for decades. The Morleys invited Jack to visit Australia in 1985, a trip that would profoundly impact his worldview. This was Jack Ma's first time outside China, and the experience was eye-opening. He saw modern infrastructure, advanced technology, and a level of prosperity that was unimaginable in China at the time. More importantly, he experienced Western values of individualism, freedom, and entrepreneurship firsthand. Jack Ma's education was unconventional and marked by repeated failures that would have discouraged most people. He struggled academically, particularly with mathematics, a subject that is highly valued in Chinese education. In China, success in education is often measured by performance on standardized tests, and mathematics is considered a core indicator of intelligence and ability. Jack Ma consistently performed poorly in this subject, which affected his overall academic standing. He failed his primary school exams twice before finally passing. This was a significant setback in a culture that places enormous pressure on academic achievement. In China, education is seen as the primary path to success and social mobility. Failure in school is not just a personal disappointment but also a source of shame for the family. Yet Jack Ma persisted. He failed his middle school exams twice as well before eventually succeeding. Each failure was a blow to his confidence, but he refused to give up. The greatest challenge came when he attempted to enter university. In China, admission to university is determined by a single exam, the Gaokao, which is taken at the end of high school. This exam is notoriously difficult and competitive, with millions of students competing for limited spots at top universities. Jack Ma took the Gaokao and failed. He took it again the following year and failed again. After his second failure, he began working to help support his family, taking on various odd jobs including delivering magazines on his bicycle. However, Jack Ma was not willing to accept defeat. He decided to take the Gaokao a third time. This decision required tremendous courage and determination. After failing twice, most people would have given up and accepted a life of manual labor or low-skilled work. But Jack Ma believed in himself and in the power of education to change his life. He studied intensely, often reading late into the night by candlelight. His persistence finally paid off when he passed the exam on his third attempt in 1984. However, his score was still not high enough to gain admission to a top-tier university. He was accepted to Hangzhou Normal University, a second-tier institution, to study English. Many would have seen this as a consolation prize, a reminder of his academic limitations. But Jack Ma embraced the opportunity with enthusiasm. He loved studying English and excelled in his language courses. He became one of the top students in his department, serving as student body president and graduating at the top of his class in 1988. At university, Jack Ma began to develop the leadership skills and confidence that would later define his career as an entrepreneur. He organized activities, led student organizations, and became known for his charisma and ability to inspire others. He also continued to practice his English, recognizing it as his competitive advantage in a China that was beginning to engage more with the outside world. After graduating, Jack Ma began his career as an English teacher at Hangzhou Zhenzi University, a local technical college. He earned just 89 yuan per month, equivalent to about $12 at the time. This was an extremely modest salary, barely enough to cover basic living expenses. Despite the low pay, Jack Ma threw himself into teaching with passion and dedication. He loved his students and was known as an inspiring and entertaining teacher who made learning English fun and engaging. He supplemented his income by founding a translation company called Haibo Translation, which he ran in the evenings and on weekends. This was one of his first entrepreneurial ventures, and it taught him valuable lessons about business, customer service, and the challenges of running a company. The translation business was not particularly profitable, but it survived because Jack Ma was willing to work long hours and reinvest any profits back into the company. Jack Ma's life took a dramatic turn in 1995, when he was 31 years old. That year, he traveled to the United States as a translator for a trade delegation from Hangzhou. This trip would change his life and ultimately change China's economic landscape. While in Seattle, Washington, he was introduced to the internet for the first time by friends of the Morley family. This was early in the internet's commercial development. Most people in the world had never heard of it, and certainly very few people in China had any awareness of this emerging technology. Jack Ma sat at a computer and watched as his host helped him access the World Wide Web. He was amazed by what he saw. Information from around the world was available instantly. He could search for anything and find results in seconds. His host suggested they search for beer, and they found listings for beers from many countries, including America, Japan, and Germany. But when they searched for Chinese beer, nothing came up. Jack Ma then searched for China itself, and found almost no information about his country online. This moment was revelatory for Jack Ma. He realized that the internet was going to change the world, and that China was completely absent from this digital revolution. He saw an enormous opportunity to connect Chinese businesses with the rest of the world through the internet. The vision formed in his mind almost immediately, a platform that would enable Chinese companies to showcase their products and services to international buyers. When he returned to China, Jack Ma was on fire with enthusiasm about the internet. He tried to explain this new technology to his friends, family, and colleagues, but almost no one understood what he was talking about. The internet was so foreign to Chinese experience that most people thought he was crazy or delusional. China in 1995 was still relatively isolated from global technology trends. Personal computers were rare. Internet infrastructure was primitive. The concept of conducting business online seemed absurd to most Chinese business people. But Jack Ma was undeterred. He quit his secure teaching job, a decision that shocked his family and friends. In China, a teaching position was considered a stable, respectable career. Giving it up to pursue a vague dream about an unknown technology seemed reckless. His wife, Zhongying, whom he had married in the late 1980s, supported him despite the financial uncertainty. This support would prove crucial in the challenging years ahead. With a small amount of borrowed money, $20,000 collected from 18 people including himself and his wife, Jack Ma founded his first internet company in April 1995. He called it China Pages, and it was designed to help Chinese businesses create websites and connect with international customers. This was China's first internet company, created before most Chinese people had even heard the word internet. The early days of China Pages were extraordinarily difficult. Jack Ma and his small team worked out of his apartment in Hangzhou. They had limited technical expertise and had to learn how to build websites from scratch. The technology was new and unreliable. Internet connections were slow and frequently crashed. Most importantly, they struggled to convince Chinese businesses that they needed a website. The concept of online marketing was completely foreign. Business owners could not understand why anyone would pay for something on the internet when traditional methods of advertising and sales worked fine. Jack Ma spent his days visiting companies, trying to explain the internet and convince them to become customers. He faced rejection after rejection. Many business owners thought he was running a scam. Others simply could not grasp the concept he was trying to explain. The language barrier was also significant because the internet was primarily in English, and most Chinese business owners did not speak English well. Despite these challenges, Jack Ma managed to sign up some clients. China Pages created websites for several Chinese companies, including a law firm and a hospital. The company began generating modest revenue. However, the business model was challenging because the infrastructure for internet commerce barely existed in China. Payments were difficult. Websites were slow to load. And perhaps most importantly, very few Chinese people had internet access, so even successful websites generated limited value for clients. In 1997, Jack Ma was recruited by the Chinese government to run an internet company in Beijing called China International Electronic Commerce Center. This was part of a government initiative to develop China's technology sector. Jack Ma moved to Beijing and worked in this government position for more than a year. During this time, he gained valuable insights into how government and business interact in China, lessons that would serve him well in building Alibaba. However, Jack Ma was frustrated by the bureaucracy and slow pace of government work. He was an entrepreneur at heart, someone who wanted to move fast and take risks. The government environment was the opposite, cautious, hierarchical, and slow-moving. By 1999, he had decided to leave his government position and return to Hangzhou to pursue his entrepreneurial dream once more. On February 21, 1999, Jack Ma gathered 17 friends and former colleagues in his apartment in Hangzhou. He spoke to them passionately for 2 hours about his vision for a new company that would revolutionize how business was conducted in China. He wanted to create a platform that would enable small and medium-sized Chinese businesses to sell products online, both domestically and internationally. This platform would be called Alibaba. The name Alibaba was chosen carefully. Jack Ma wanted a name that was easy to remember, easy to pronounce in any language, and associated with positive imagery. Alibaba, from the famous story Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, represented opening doors to treasure, which resonated with his vision of opening doors to opportunity for Chinese businesses. He tested the name on people in different countries and found that everyone recognized it and could pronounce it, making it the perfect name for a global company. The founding team of 18 people, including Jack Ma, pooled together $60,000 to start the company. This was all the money they had, and they were betting everything on this venture. They had no office, so they worked out of Jack Ma's apartment. They had limited technical expertise, so they had to learn as they went. The internet infrastructure in China was still primitive, with slow connections and limited access. Most Chinese businesses were still skeptical about the internet. And they faced competition from much better funded companies, both Chinese and international. The vision for Alibaba was ambitious and, to many observers, unrealistic. Jack Ma wanted to create an online marketplace where small businesses could list their products and connect with buyers around the world. This was different from the business-to-consumer model of companies like Amazon. Alibaba would focus on business-to-business transactions, helping manufacturers and wholesalers find customers. Jack Ma believed that small businesses were underserved by existing systems and that the internet could level the playing field, giving them access to global markets that had previously been available only to large corporations. The timing of Alibaba's founding was both fortunate and challenging. It was launched just as the dot-com bubble was reaching its peak. Technology companies were attracting massive investments based on little more than ideas and promises of future growth. Money was flowing freely to internet startups, and venture capitalists were eager to invest in the next big thing. This meant that Alibaba was able to raise capital relatively easily in its early days. In late 1999, Alibaba received its first major investment, $5 million from Goldman Sachs. This was followed in January 2000 by a $20 million investment led by SoftBank, the Japanese technology investment firm led by Masayoshi Son. Son became one of Jack Ma's most important supporters and mentors, providing not just capital but also strategic guidance and connections. Son saw in Jack Ma and Alibaba the potential to create something truly transformative. However, the dot-com bubble burst in early 2000, and the environment for internet companies changed dramatically almost overnight. Investors became skeptical of internet businesses. Funding dried up. Many dot-com companies collapsed. Stock prices of technology companies plummeted. It seemed like the internet revolution might have been overhyped, a fad that was now ending. This was a crisis moment for Alibaba and for Jack Ma personally. The bursting of the dot-com bubble was a test of Jack Ma's leadership and resilience. Many internet companies failed during this period, unable to adapt to the new reality of scarce capital and skeptical investors. But Jack Ma had learned from his earlier struggles and failures. He understood that success required patience, persistence, and the ability to survive difficult times. Rather than panicking, he focused on building a sustainable business model and conserving cash. During this period, Alibaba faced intense internal debates about strategy. Some team members wanted to focus on the international market, believing that was where the real opportunity lay. Others wanted to focus on the domestic Chinese market. There were disagreements about whether to charge customers fees immediately or to build scale first and monetize later. Jack Ma had to navigate these conflicts while keeping the team motivated and focused. One of Jack Ma's key decisions during this period was to maintain a strong focus on company culture. He believed that culture was what would hold the team together during difficult times and differentiate Alibaba from competitors. He articulated a set of core values that emphasized customer focus, teamwork, innovation, and integrity. He hired people who shared these values and were willing to work hard for modest compensation in pursuit of a larger vision. Jack Ma was also obsessive about customer service. While many internet companies focused on technology and rapid growth, Jack Ma insisted that Alibaba should put customers first. He personally answered customer emails and phone calls in the early days. He visited customers to understand their needs and challenges. This customer-centric approach became embedded in Alibaba's DNA and would prove crucial to its long-term success. By 2001, Alibaba had survived the dot-com crash and was beginning to gain traction. The company had hundreds of thousands of registered users, mostly small and medium-sized businesses in China looking to connect with international buyers. The platform was facilitating real transactions and creating real value. Revenue was growing, although the company was not yet profitable. More importantly, Alibaba was building a network effect. The more sellers joined the platform, the more attractive it became to buyers. And the more buyers came, the more sellers wanted to join. In 2003, Jack Ma made another pivotal decision that would define Alibaba's future. He launched Taobao, a consumer-to-consumer online marketplace similar to eBay. This was a bold and risky move. eBay had entered the Chinese market in 2002 through the acquisition of a local company called EachNet. eBay was a dominant global player with massive resources and an established brand. Most observers believed that competing with eBay in China was futile. But Jack Ma saw an opportunity. He believed that eBay did not understand Chinese consumers and Chinese market dynamics. eBay charged listing fees and transaction fees, which deterred many potential sellers in China who were used to free or very cheap alternatives. eBay's platform was also not well adapted to Chinese preferences and habits. Jack Ma decided that Taobao would be free for sellers, at least initially, and would be designed specifically for the Chinese market. This decision to compete with eBay was met with skepticism both inside and outside Alibaba. It required significant investment at a time when Alibaba's resources were limited. It meant taking on a powerful, well-funded competitor. And there was no guarantee that the free model would eventually generate revenue. But Jack Ma was confident. He understood Chinese consumers and merchants better than eBay did. And he was willing to be patient, to invest for the long term rather than seeking immediate profits. The competition between Taobao and eBay became one of the most famous business battles in internet history. eBay initially dismissed Taobao as a minor threat. The eBay executive in charge of China famously said that eBay would crush Taobao the way an elephant crushes an ant. But Taobao proved to be far more resilient and adaptable than eBay expected. Jack Ma and his team studied eBay's platform carefully and identified its weaknesses. They then designed Taobao to address those weaknesses specifically. One key innovation was the introduction of Alipay in 2004. This was an escrow payment service that held buyers' payments until they confirmed receipt of goods. This addressed a critical problem in Chinese e-commerce, the lack of trust between buyers and sellers who did not know each other. In a market where fraud was common and legal recourse was limited, Alipay provided a mechanism that protected both parties and made online transactions safer. This simple innovation was crucial in building consumer confidence in online shopping. Taobao also introduced features that made sense for Chinese users, such as instant messaging tools that allowed buyers and sellers to negotiate prices and discuss products in real time. This reflected the Chinese preference for personal interaction and relationship building even in online transactions. eBay's platform did not allow direct communication between buyers and sellers, which Chinese users found frustrating and impersonal. By 2006, Taobao had surpassed eBay in the Chinese market. eBay, facing mounting losses and unable to compete with Taobao's free model and localized features, shut down its Chinese operations in 2006. This victory was a defining moment for Jack Ma and Alibaba. It demonstrated that a Chinese company could defeat a powerful American competitor by understanding local market dynamics better. It also validated Jack Ma's patient, long-term approach to building a business. The success of Taobao opened new opportunities for Alibaba. The company launched Tmall in 2008, a platform for established brands and retailers to sell directly to consumers. While Taobao focused on consumer-to-consumer transactions and small merchants, Tmall targeted larger businesses and offered a more premium shopping experience. This dual-platform strategy allowed Alibaba to serve different market segments and maximize its reach. Alibaba also continued to expand and evolve the Alipay platform. What started as a simple escrow service evolved into a comprehensive digital payments ecosystem. Users could use Alipay not just for online shopping but for a wide range of financial transactions, including utility bill payments, mobile phone top-ups, money transfers, and more. Alipay was becoming a digital wallet that Chinese consumers used daily. The growth of Alibaba's platforms was fueled by broader trends in China. The Chinese economy was booming, growing at double-digit rates through much of the 2000s. Hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens were joining the middle class and gaining disposable income for the first time. Internet penetration was increasing rapidly as broadband infrastructure improved and smartphones became affordable. E-commerce was transforming from a niche activity to a mainstream consumer behavior. Jack Ma and Alibaba rode this wave of growth brilliantly. But the success was not just about being in the right place at the right time. It was about execution, understanding customers, building the right teams, and making smart strategic decisions. Jack Ma proved to be an exceptional leader, able to inspire loyalty and hard work from his employees, navigate complex relationships with government officials, and articulate a compelling vision that attracted investors and partners. One of Jack Ma's most important strategic decisions during this period was the relationship he cultivated with the Chinese government. In China, success in business requires managing relationships with government officials at various levels. The government has enormous power to support or hinder businesses through regulations, licenses, and informal pressure. Many foreign internet companies struggled in China because they did not understand or were unwilling to navigate this complex political landscape. Jack Ma understood that he needed to work with the government rather than against it. He positioned Alibaba as a company that was helping China develop economically by enabling entrepreneurship and creating jobs. He emphasized that Alibaba was serving small businesses, which aligned with government priorities. He hired government affairs specialists and invested time in building relationships with officials. This approach helped Alibaba avoid the regulatory obstacles that befell some competitors. However, this relationship with the government was not without complications and controversies. Critics argued that Alibaba was too cozy with authorities and that this gave the company unfair advantages. There were also questions about how Alibaba handled censorship and data privacy, issues that were particularly sensitive given China's political system. Jack Ma had to walk a careful line, maintaining government support while also preserving enough independence to operate effectively and maintain credibility with international investors and partners. By 2010, Alibaba had become the dominant force in Chinese e-commerce. Taobao and Tmall together controlled the majority of the market. Alipay was the leading digital payment platform. The company was profitable and growing rapidly. However, Jack Ma faced a new challenge: how to structure the company for the future and provide returns to the investors who had backed Alibaba in its early days. The issue of corporate structure was complex. Alibaba had significant foreign investment, including from SoftBank, Yahoo, and various venture capital firms. These investors had been crucial to Alibaba's survival and growth, particularly during the difficult period after the dot-com crash. However, Chinese regulations restricted foreign ownership of internet companies, which created legal complications. Alibaba had navigated this through a complex structure involving multiple entities and contractual arrangements. Another issue was control. Jack Ma and the founding team wanted to maintain control over Alibaba's strategic direction, even as outside investors held significant equity stakes. This was not unusual for founder-led companies, but it required careful negotiation and creative corporate governance structures. Jack Ma believed that maintaining founder control was essential to preserving Alibaba's culture and long-term vision. In 2011, Alibaba made a controversial decision regarding Alipay. The company transferred ownership of Alipay from the main Alibaba entity to a separate company controlled by Jack Ma. This decision was made, according to Jack Ma, to comply with new Chinese regulations that restricted foreign ownership of payment companies. However, Yahoo, which owned a significant stake in Alibaba, was not informed of the transfer in advance and was outraged when it learned about it. The Alipay controversy created a major crisis. Yahoo publicly criticized Alibaba and Jack Ma. There were concerns that this could derail Alibaba's plans for future fundraising and a potential public offering. Some commentators questioned Jack Ma's integrity and whether foreign investors could trust him. It was one of the most difficult periods in Jack Ma's career as he navigated intense media scrutiny and strained relationships with key investors. Jack Ma defended the decision, arguing that he was complying with Chinese law and protecting Alibaba's business. He also pointed out that separating Alipay allowed it to obtain the necessary licenses to operate as a payment company in China, which benefited all of Alibaba's stakeholders. After months of negotiation, a settlement was reached in which Alibaba would receive a share of Alipay's profits and a significant one-time payment if Alipay went public. The crisis was resolved, but it left lingering questions about governance and trust. Despite this controversy, Alibaba continued its rapid growth. By 2012, the Alibaba platforms were facilitating over $1 trillion in transactions annually, equivalent to more than $150 billion. The company was creating enormous economic value, enabling millions of small businesses to reach customers and facilitating employment for millions of people in logistics, customer service, and related industries. Jack Ma also launched Alibaba Cloud Computing, a cloud services division aimed at providing data storage and computing power to businesses. This was a strategic move to diversify Alibaba's business and position the company for the future as cloud computing became increasingly important. However, the cloud business required massive investment and would not be profitable for years, testing Jack Ma's patience and commitment to long-term thinking. In 2013, Alibaba's logistics infrastructure was revolutionized through the launch of Cainiao Network. This was a logistics data platform that connected various delivery companies and warehouses, enabling more efficient and reliable delivery of packages ordered through Alibaba's platforms. Cainiao did not own trucks or warehouses but acted as a coordinator, using data and technology to optimize the logistics network. This innovation was crucial in enabling Alibaba to handle the massive volume of transactions generated during peak shopping periods. The most famous example of Alibaba's scale came with Singles' Day, a shopping holiday that Jack Ma transformed into the world's largest shopping event. Singles' Day, November 11th, was originally an unofficial Chinese holiday celebrating single people. In 2009, Alibaba decided to turn it into a shopping promotion on Taobao and Tmall. The first Singles' Day sale generated modest revenues, but the concept caught on with Chinese consumers. Year after year, Singles' Day grew larger. By 2013, Alibaba's platforms processed over $5 billion in transactions in a single day during Singles' Day, surpassing the combined sales of Black Friday and Cyber Monday in the United States. The logistics network delivered hundreds of millions of packages in the days following the event. Singles' Day became a showcase of Alibaba's capabilities and a symbol of Chinese consumer power. In September 2014, Alibaba went public on the New York Stock Exchange in the largest initial public offering in history at that time. The company raised $25 billion, valuing Alibaba at over $230 billion. Jack Ma, who had started his entrepreneurial journey with $20,000 borrowed from friends, was now the richest person in China, with a net worth exceeding $25 billion. The IPO was a triumph for Jack Ma personally and for the Chinese technology industry more broadly. It demonstrated that Chinese companies could compete on the global stage and create enormous value. At the opening ceremony on the New York Stock Exchange, Jack Ma rang the bell surrounded by Alibaba employees and customers, including 8 small business owners who represented the entrepreneurs that Alibaba served. This symbolic gesture reinforced Jack Ma's message that Alibaba's success was about enabling others, not just enriching founders and investors. However, success brought new challenges. As a public company, Alibaba faced greater scrutiny from investors, regulators, and the media. The company had to balance the demands of quarterly earnings reports with long-term strategic investments. There were ongoing concerns about counterfeit goods on Alibaba's platforms, which damaged the company's reputation and created tensions with brand owners. Alibaba also faced increasing competition from rivals like JD.com and the rapid rise of mobile commerce driven by Tencent's WeChat platform. Jack Ma responded to these challenges by continuing to invest in innovation and new businesses. Alibaba expanded aggressively into new areas including digital entertainment, healthcare, financial services, and international markets. The company acquired stakes in numerous companies and formed partnerships around the world. This diversification was aimed at positioning Alibaba for long-term growth beyond its core e-commerce business. One of the most significant strategic moves was the development of Ant Financial, the financial services arm that grew out of Alipay. Ant Financial became one of the world's most valuable fintech companies, offering a range of services including payments, wealth management, insurance, and credit. The company used technology and data analytics to serve hundreds of millions of customers, many of whom were underserved by traditional banks. Ant Financial represented Jack Ma's vision of using technology to democratize access to financial services. Throughout his career, Jack Ma was known for his charismatic leadership style and his ability to inspire people with his vision. He was a gifted public speaker who could captivate audiences with stories, analogies, and bold predictions about the future. He cultivated a strong company culture at Alibaba, emphasizing values such as customer focus, teamwork, and innovation. Employees were encouraged to think big and take risks. Failure was accepted as part of the learning process. Jack Ma also became increasingly involved in philanthropy and public policy issues. He established the Jack Ma Foundation to support education and entrepreneurship. He spoke at forums around the world about technology, globalization, and the future of work. He became a prominent voice advocating for small businesses and arguing that technology companies had a responsibility to create social value, not just profits. However, Jack Ma's relationship with the Chinese government became more complicated as his influence and wealth grew. In October 2020, just days before Ant Financial was scheduled to go public in what would have been the largest IPO in history, Jack Ma gave a speech in Shanghai that was highly critical of Chinese financial regulators. He argued that regulations were stifling innovation and that China needed to reform its financial system to support entrepreneurship and growth. This speech had severe consequences. The Chinese government abruptly suspended Ant Financial's IPO, citing regulatory concerns. Jack Ma was summoned to meetings with regulators. In the months that followed, Ant Financial was forced to restructure its business and accept much greater regulatory oversight. Alibaba also faced antitrust investigations and was eventually fined $2.8 billion for anti-competitive practices. Jack Ma largely disappeared from public view, leading to intense speculation about his fate. The clash between Jack Ma and the Chinese government reflected broader tensions in China about the role of technology companies and the power of private entrepreneurs. The government was concerned that companies like Alibaba and Ant Financial had become too large and influential, potentially posing systemic risks to the financial system and threats to social stability. There was also concern about the concentration of data and the potential for misuse. For Jack Ma personally, this was a humbling experience. The man who had built one of the world's most valuable companies and had been celebrated as a national hero found himself constrained and criticized. He stepped down from his formal leadership roles at Alibaba, though he retained significant influence as a major shareholder and founder. His public appearances became rare. The message from the government was clear: no one, no matter how successful or wealthy, was above the state. Despite these setbacks, Jack Ma's legacy is secure. He fundamentally transformed how business is conducted in China and created opportunities for millions of entrepreneurs and small businesses. Alibaba and its affiliated companies have become integral parts of Chinese economic life. The company employs hundreds of thousands of people directly and has enabled employment for millions more in related industries. The platforms facilitate trillions of dollars in economic activity annually. Jack Ma's story also offers important lessons about entrepreneurship, leadership, and resilience. His journey from humble beginnings as the son of traditional musicians, through repeated failures in school and business, to becoming one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs is inspiring. His emphasis on persistence, learning from failure, thinking differently, and maintaining a customer-centric focus provides a roadmap for aspiring entrepreneurs everywhere. One of Jack Ma's most important insights was that the internet could be a force for inclusion and empowerment. In a country where small businesses had historically struggled to access markets and capital, Alibaba created platforms that leveled the playing field. A rural farmer could sell products to customers across China or around the world. A small manufacturer could compete with large corporations. This democratization of commerce created enormous economic and social value. Jack Ma also understood the importance of trust in online transactions. Through innovations like Alipay, he addressed the fundamental problem of how strangers could safely do business with each other over the internet. This required not just technology but also new forms of governance and dispute resolution. Alibaba invested heavily in systems to verify sellers, protect buyers, and adjudicate conflicts. This infrastructure of trust was essential to the growth of e-commerce. Another key aspect of Jack Ma's success was his ability to think globally while executing locally. He studied successful internet companies from around the world, particularly American companies like Amazon and eBay, and learned from their strategies. However, he did not simply copy these models. Instead, he adapted them to Chinese market conditions, consumer preferences, and regulatory requirements. This ability to borrow ideas while innovating locally was crucial to defeating foreign competitors. Jack Ma's leadership style was also distinctive. He was not a technical expert and did not write code or design products himself. Instead, his strength was in vision, communication, and team building. He could articulate a compelling future and inspire people to work toward it. He hired talented people and gave them the autonomy to execute. He created a culture that encouraged experimentation and accepted failure as part of innovation. This approach enabled Alibaba to move quickly and adapt to changing market conditions. The cultural values that Jack Ma instilled at Alibaba reflected his personal philosophy. He emphasized the importance of staying customer-focused, even as the company grew large and complex. He encouraged employees to think like owners and take responsibility for outcomes. He promoted transparency and open communication. And he insisted on maintaining high ethical standards, even when shortcuts might have been tempting. However, Jack Ma's story also reveals the challenges and contradictions inherent in building a large technology company in an authoritarian political system. His success depended on maintaining good relationships with government officials and navigating complex regulations. This sometimes required compromises that troubled critics, particularly regarding issues like censorship and data privacy. The question of how much Chinese tech companies like Alibaba cooperate with government surveillance and control remains contentious. The regulatory crackdown on Alibaba and Ant Financial in 2020 and 2021 highlighted the risks of becoming too powerful in a system where the state maintains ultimate authority. Jack Ma learned, as other successful Chinese entrepreneurs have, that political risk is an unavoidable aspect of doing business in China. The implicit social contract is that private entrepreneurs can become wealthy and successful, but only as long as they do not challenge the government's authority or priorities. Looking at Jack Ma's investment philosophy and business strategy, several patterns emerge that explain his success. First, he focused on solving real problems for underserved customers. Small businesses needed access to markets. Consumers needed trust and convenience in online shopping. Merchants needed logistics and payment infrastructure. By addressing these practical needs, Alibaba created genuine value that customers were willing to pay for. Second, Jack Ma was patient and willing to sacrifice short-term profits for long-term market position. Taobao was free for sellers for many years before Alibaba figured out how to monetize it effectively through advertising and premium services. This patience allowed Taobao to build a dominant market position that eventually generated enormous profits. Many competitors were unwilling or unable to sustain losses for so long. Third, Jack Ma understood the power of network effects and ecosystem thinking. Each product and service Alibaba launched strengthened the others. E-commerce platforms needed payment systems, which needed logistics networks, which needed cloud computing infrastructure, which needed financial services. By building a comprehensive ecosystem, Alibaba created competitive moats that were very difficult for rivals to overcome. Fourth, Jack Ma invested heavily in technology and data analytics. While he was not a technologist himself, he understood that technology would be the key competitive advantage. Alibaba hired top engineering talent and gave them resources to build sophisticated systems for search, recommendations, fraud detection, logistics optimization, and more. The company's ability to handle billions of transactions efficiently was a remarkable technical achievement. Fifth, Jack Ma was an effective capital allocator. He raised money when capital was available and terms were favorable. He invested aggressively in growth and new opportunities when he believed they would create long-term value. He also returned capital to shareholders through buybacks and dividends when appropriate. This disciplined approach to capital allocation maximized returns for investors while enabling the company to make bold strategic moves. Jack Ma's impact extends beyond business to broader questions about technology's role in society. He was an early advocate for using technology to address social problems and create inclusive growth. He argued that technology should empower individuals and small businesses, not just concentrate power in the hands of large corporations and governments. This philosophy resonated with many people, particularly in developing countries where traditional economic systems had failed to provide opportunity and mobility. However, the reality of Alibaba's impact is more complex and mixed than Jack Ma's optimistic rhetoric sometimes suggested. While the platforms enabled many people to start businesses and earn income, they also created intense competition and pressure. Many small merchants struggled to survive in the hyper-competitive environment of online marketplaces. The low prices and fast delivery that consumers loved often came at the cost of thin margins for sellers and difficult working conditions for delivery workers. The concentration of economic power in platforms like Alibaba also raised concerns about monopolistic behavior and market manipulation. The company's ability to favor certain sellers, control search rankings, and collect vast amounts of data on merchants and consumers gave it enormous influence. Regulators in China and other countries began questioning whether such concentration of power was healthy and whether platforms should be subject to greater oversight. The story of Singles' Day illustrates these contradictions. On one hand, it is a celebration of consumer power and the efficiency of e-commerce. Hundreds of millions of people get access to products at discounted prices. Thousands of businesses generate significant revenue in a short period. The logistics network delivers packages with remarkable speed and efficiency. It is a testament to what technology and organization can achieve. On the other hand, Singles' Day has been criticized for promoting consumerism and waste. The massive volume of purchases leads to excessive packaging and environmental damage. The pressure on workers in warehouses and delivery to meet demand is intense and sometimes dangerous. The event creates a sense of artificial urgency and encourages people to buy things they may not need. It raises questions about whether such consumption-driven growth is sustainable or desirable. Jack Ma himself has evolved in his thinking about these issues. In his later years as an active business leader, he spoke more about sustainability, social responsibility, and the need for business to balance profit with purpose. He acknowledged that technology was creating disruption and that companies had obligations to help workers adapt and to ensure that the benefits of growth were shared more broadly. However, critics argued that these sentiments were not always matched by concrete actions. The question of Jack Ma's legacy will be debated for years to come. By any measure, he achieved extraordinary success. He built one of the world's most valuable companies from nothing. He created enormous wealth for himself, his employees, and his investors. He enabled millions of entrepreneurs to start and grow businesses. He helped modernize China's economy and integrate it more fully into the global trading system. These are remarkable accomplishments that few entrepreneurs in history can match. At the same time, Jack Ma's story raises important questions about power, governance, and the relationship between business and the state. His difficulties with Chinese regulators illustrate the limits of entrepreneurial autonomy in an authoritarian system. His compromises on issues like censorship and data privacy trouble those who believe technology companies should resist government overreach. His accumulation of vast personal wealth while many Chinese workers struggle highlights ongoing issues of inequality. Perhaps the most important lesson from Jack Ma's story is about the nature of entrepreneurial success itself. Jack Ma succeeded not because he was the smartest person or had the best technology. He succeeded because he understood his customers deeply, because he was persistent in the face of repeated failures, because he built a strong team and culture, because he made smart strategic decisions at crucial moments, and yes, because he was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. His early struggles and failures were not obstacles to success but essential preparation for it. Each failure taught him lessons that he applied later. Being rejected for jobs made him empathetic to small businesses that were rejected by traditional financial systems. Failing tests taught him the value of persistence. Working as a poorly paid teacher gave him communication skills and patience. His early exposure to foreign tourists gave him a global perspective. All of these experiences shaped the leader he became. Jack Ma's emphasis on culture and values over pure technical excellence is particularly noteworthy. Many technology companies focus on hiring the smartest engineers and building the best products. Jack Ma certainly cared about product quality, but he believed that culture and values were more important determinants of long-term success. A team with shared values and strong cohesion could overcome technical disadvantages and outcompete better-resourced rivals. His customer-centric philosophy was also distinctive and important. Jack Ma constantly reminded his team that their job was to serve customers, not to maximize short-term profits or please investors. This sounds like common sense, but in practice many companies lose sight of this principle as they grow. Alibaba's success in defeating eBay and maintaining market leadership came largely from being more responsive to customer needs and more willing to evolve based on customer feedback. The relationship between Jack Ma and his co-founders and early employees deserves attention as well. The 18 people who started Alibaba with him in his apartment showed extraordinary loyalty and commitment. Many of them stayed with the company for decades and became wealthy as a result. Jack Ma credited them as essential to Alibaba's success and tried to ensure they were rewarded appropriately. This loyalty and shared purpose was a key competitive advantage, particularly during difficult periods when other companies struggled to retain talent. Jack Ma's partnership with Mosoloshi, son of SoftBank, was also crucial. Sun provided not just capital but also mentorship and strategic guidance. He had experience building technology companies and understood the long-term nature of internet businesses. His willingness to support Jack Ma during tough times, including the period after the dot-com crash, was instrumental in Alibaba's survival. This relationship illustrates the importance of finding investors who are true partners, not just sources of money. The competitive battles that Alibaba fought and won provide lessons about strategy and execution. The defeat of eBay showed the importance of local adaptation and the value of understanding customer psychology and preferences. The ongoing competition with JD.com and other rivals demonstrated the need for constant innovation and the dangers of complacency. The expansion into new business lines showed the benefits of diversification and ecosystem thinking. Jack Ma's public persona and communication style were also important assets. He was comfortable on stage and in front of cameras. He could explain complex business concepts in simple, memorable ways. He used humor and storytelling to make his points. He was authentic and vulnerable, willing to talk about his failures and doubts. This made him relatable and trustworthy, which helped in recruiting talent, attracting investors, and building the Alibaba brand. However, this same public persona may have contributed to his later difficulties with regulators. His confidence sometimes came across as arrogance. His willingness to challenge conventional wisdom, which served him well as an entrepreneur, made him seem disrespectful of authority. In a political system that values harmony and deference to leaders, Jack Ma's outspokenness was risky. His October 2020 speech criticizing regulators was seen by many as crossing a line. The restructuring of Ant Financial and the regulatory actions against Alibaba had significant consequences beyond Jack Ma personally. They signaled a shift in Chinese government policy toward technology companies. The era of relatively light regulation and government support for tech champions was ending. A new era of greater scrutiny, stricter rules, and emphasis on social responsibility was beginning. This had implications for all Chinese technology companies and for foreign investors evaluating opportunities in China. For Jack Ma, the experience was clearly humbling and difficult. After years of being celebrated as a visionary and a hero, he found himself criticized and constrained. His public silence during this period suggested someone who was reassessing his priorities and his role. Some reports indicated he was spending more time on philanthropy and education, returning in some ways to his roots as a teacher. The Jack Ma Foundation, which he established before stepping down from Alibaba, focuses on education and rural development. It provides support for teachers, particularly in rural areas, and promotes educational innovation. This work reflects Jack Ma's belief that education was the key to opportunity and that improving education, especially in underserved areas, was one of the most important contributions he could make. Jack Ma has also been involved in environmental initiatives, recognizing that rapid economic growth in China has come at enormous environmental cost. He has supported efforts to promote sustainable development and to encourage businesses to consider environmental impact in their decision-making. This represents an evolution in his thinking from pure growth focus to more balanced consideration of social and environmental factors. Looking at Jack Ma's investment and business decisions over his career, several themes emerge. He consistently focused on large, underserved markets where technology could create significant value. He was willing to compete against larger, better-funded competitors when he believed he understood the market better. He invested for the long term, accepting years of losses in pursuit of market leadership. He built ecosystems rather than just standalone products. And he maintained focus on his core mission of helping small businesses, even as the company grew and diversified. His failures and mistakes are also instructive. The Alipay ownership transfer was handled poorly and damaged trust with investors. Some of Alibaba's international expansion efforts, particularly in markets like the United States and India, were less successful than hoped. The company's efforts to address counterfeit goods and protect intellectual property were often reactive and insufficient. And Jack Ma's relationship with regulators, while generally good for many years, ultimately became problematic. What would Jack Ma say his greatest achievement was? Based on his public statements over the years, it would likely be enabling millions of small businesses and entrepreneurs to succeed. He often said that he was most proud not of Alibaba's market value or his personal wealth, but of the jobs created and the opportunities provided. He saw Alibaba as a platform that empowered others, and he measured success by the success of Alibaba's customers. This perspective, whether entirely genuine or partially marketing, reflects an important insight about value creation. The most successful platform businesses are those that create value for others, not just for themselves. By helping small businesses succeed, Alibaba created a virtuous cycle where success bred more success. The more valuable Alibaba made itself to small businesses, the more those businesses used the platform, which generated more data and more value. For investors and entrepreneurs studying Jack Ma's career, several key lessons stand out. First, persist through failure. Jack Ma failed many times before succeeding, and each failure taught him something valuable. Second, understand your customers better than your competitors do. Alibaba's success came largely from understanding Chinese merchants and consumers better than foreign rivals. Third, think long-term and be patient. Building dominant market positions requires years of investment and occasional sacrifice of short-term profits. Fourth, culture and values matter as much as strategy and technology. The team you build and the culture you create will determine how well you execute and how you handle challenges. Fifth, adapt to local conditions rather than imposing foreign models. What works in one market may not work in another. Sixth, build ecosystems and network effects that create competitive moats. Standalone products are vulnerable to competition in ways that integrated ecosystems are not. Seventh, maintain focus on your core mission even as you grow and diversify. Alibaba expanded into many businesses but always maintained its focus on serving small businesses and merchants. Eighth, communicate your vision clearly and inspire others to join you. Jack Ma's ability to articulate a compelling future was crucial in attracting talent and investment. Ninth, be willing to compete against larger, more established competitors when you have a better understanding of the market. David can beat Goliath with the right strategy and execution. 10th, recognize that success brings new challenges and risks. As companies grow large and powerful, they attract regulatory scrutiny and political attention. Managing these dynamics is as important as managing business operations. Jack Ma learned this lesson the hard way, but it is a lesson that all successful entrepreneurs must eventually confront. The question of what comes next for Jack Ma personally remains open. He is still relatively young and clearly has the energy and ambition to remain active. Whether he will return to a more public role at Alibaba, focus on philanthropy and education, pursue new business ventures, or some combination of these is uncertain. The Chinese government's attitude toward high-profile entrepreneurs like Jack Ma will influence what is possible. What is certain is that Jack Ma's story will continue to inspire and teach for generations to come. His journey from struggling student to English teacher to failed entrepreneur to billionaire technology pioneer is remarkable. The company he built transformed an entire economy and touched hundreds of millions of lives. The lessons from his successes and failures provide valuable insights for anyone interested in entrepreneurship, technology, or the future of business. In the end, Jack Ma represents both the promise and the peril of entrepreneurship in the modern age. He showed that individuals with vision, persistence, and the right skills can create enormous value and change the world. But he also showed that success brings complexity, that power attracts scrutiny, and that even the most successful entrepreneurs must navigate political and social realities beyond their control. His story is distinctly Chinese in many ways, reflecting the unique opportunities and constraints of building a business in China's rapidly evolving economy and political system. But it is also universal, speaking to fundamental truths about human ambition, creativity, resilience, and the desire to make a difference. Whether viewed as a hero, a cautionary tale, or something in between, Jack Ma's life and career offer lessons that transcend national boundaries and cultural contexts. For those interested in technology and its impact on society, Jack Ma's story raises important questions. Can technology truly democratize opportunity and create more inclusive economies? Or does it inevitably concentrate power and wealth? How should platforms be regulated to balance innovation with fairness? What responsibilities do technology companies have to society beyond maximizing shareholder value? These questions do not have easy answers, but examining Jack Ma's career provides a useful framework for thinking about them. For those interested in China specifically, Jack Ma's story illuminates the complex relationship between entrepreneurship and state power in China's unique economic system. It shows how private entrepreneurs can achieve remarkable success within the system, but also the limits of that autonomy. It demonstrates both the opportunities created by China's rapid development and the challenges and contradictions inherent in that growth model. Jack Ma's emphasis on globalization and his efforts to connect Chinese businesses with the world came at a time when China was opening up and integrating into the global economy. His vision of an interconnected world where small businesses anywhere could sell to customers everywhere resonated with the optimism of the early internet era. However, more recent trends toward nationalism, trade tensions, and concerns about technology and data security have made that vision more complicated and challenging to realize. The evolution of Alibaba from a simple business-to-business marketplace to a vast technology conglomerate spanning e-commerce, payments, cloud computing, logistics, entertainment, and financial services illustrates both the opportunities and risks of platform businesses. The ability to leverage data and customer relationships across multiple services creates powerful competitive advantages. But it also creates dependencies and systemic risks that regulators worry about. As China's economy matures and shifts from pure growth focus to more balanced development that considers inequality, environment, and social stability, companies like Alibaba face pressure to align with new priorities. Jack Ma's rhetoric about social responsibility and sustainable development reflects this changing environment. Whether this represents genuine evolution in his thinking or pragmatic adaptation to new realities is debatable, but the shift is real and significant. For young entrepreneurs in China and around the world, Jack Ma remains an inspirational figure despite recent setbacks. His story demonstrates that success is possible even when starting from humble circumstances, even after repeated failures, even when competing against seemingly unbeatable rivals. His emphasis on persistence, learning, customer focus, and team building provides a roadmap that aspiring entrepreneurs can follow. However, his recent experiences also provide sobering lessons about the risks and challenges of success. Building a valuable company is hard. Maintaining that success over time is even harder. Navigating political and regulatory environments requires skills and attention beyond pure business execution. And accumulating great wealth and power brings responsibilities and scrutiny that must be managed carefully. In reflecting on what made Jack Ma truly exceptional, several qualities stand out. His ability to learn from failure and persist despite setbacks was remarkable. Many people face failure, but few respond with Jack Ma's determination and resilience. His willingness to think differently and challenge conventional wisdom, whether in competing with eBay or in building new business models, set him apart from more conventional thinkers. His global mindset, developed through those early morning bike rides to talk with foreign tourists, gave him perspectives that most Chinese businesspeople of his generation lacked. His communication skills and charisma helped him inspire teams, attract investors, and build a brand. His customer-centric philosophy kept Alibaba focused on creating real value rather than chasing fads or copying competitors. Perhaps most importantly, his timing was fortunate. He built an internet company just as China's internet infrastructure and adoption were taking off. He focused on e-commerce just as Chinese consumers were gaining purchasing power and looking for convenient shopping options. He emphasized mobile commerce just as smartphones became ubiquitous. Being in the right place at the right time with the right product and team was crucial to Alibaba's success. But timing alone does not explain the outcome. Many other entrepreneurs had similar timing and failed. Jack Ma succeeded because he executed well, made smart strategic choices, built a strong organization, and persisted through difficulties that stopped others. The combination of all these factors, not any single one, explains his extraordinary success. As Jack Ma enters what may be considered the wisdom phase of his life, the question of his ultimate legacy remains open. Will he be remembered primarily as a great entrepreneur who built an important company? As a visionary who helped transform China's economy and connect it to the world? As a controversial figure whose relationship with power and authority was complicated? As a philanthropist who used his wealth to support education and social causes? The answer is likely all of these things. Complex individuals resist simple categorization. Jack Ma's life and career contain multitudes, successes and failures, wisdom and mistakes, idealism and pragmatism. The full assessment of his impact will require more time and historical distance. What is clear now is that he played a significant role in one of the great economic transformations of our time, China's rise as a technology power and the digitization of commerce worldwide. For the broader story of technology and society, Jack Ma's career illustrates both the potential and the limitations of using technology to drive economic development and social change. Technology can create enormous value and opportunity. Platforms can connect people and enable transactions that were previously impossible. Data and algorithms can make systems more efficient and personalized. But technology also concentrates power, creates new forms of inequality, enables surveillance and control, and disrupts existing social and economic arrangements. Navigating these tensions requires wisdom, ethical grounding, and attention to impacts beyond immediate business metrics. Jack Ma's rhetoric often acknowledged these responsibilities, but the actions of Alibaba did not always live up to the rhetoric. This gap between stated values and actual practice is common in business, but it is particularly visible and consequential when companies become as large and influential as Alibaba. The relationship between Jack Ma and the Chinese government, which has been central to his story, reflects broader questions about the role of the state in the economy and the relationship between private enterprise and public authority. In Western democracies, there is an assumption that private businesses should operate with significant autonomy, subject to laws and regulations but otherwise free to pursue their objectives. In China's system, the relationship is different and more complex. Jack Ma thrived for many years by working within this system and maintaining good relationships with officials. His success was enabled by government policies that supported internet development and by regulatory frameworks that were relatively light compared to other sectors. But as his power and influence grew, the government became concerned about the implications. The crackdown on Alibaba and Ant Financial represented a reassertion of state authority and a reminder that in China's political system, the party remains supreme. This dynamic is important for anyone trying to understand China's economy or considering doing business there. Private entrepreneurship is encouraged and supported, but within bounds defined by political authorities. Those bounds can shift, and successful entrepreneurs must be attuned to political currents and willing to adapt. Jack Ma's difficulties came partly from pushing too hard against those bounds and from appearing to challenge regulatory authority too directly. Looking forward, the lessons from Jack Ma's career remain relevant for entrepreneurs everywhere. The fundamental principles of understanding customers, building strong teams, creating real value, thinking long-term, and persisting through challenges are timeless. The specific tactics and strategies must evolve with changing technology and market conditions, but these core principles endure. For China specifically, the question of how the government will balance its desire for technological innovation and economic growth with its concerns about social stability and political control will continue to evolve. Jack Ma's story is one chapter in this ongoing negotiation between entrepreneurial dynamism and state authority. How future chapters unfold will depend on decisions made by both business leaders and government officials. In conclusion, Jack Ma's journey from struggling English teacher to technology billionaire to chastened entrepreneur offers profound insights into the nature of success, the role of technology in society, and the complex relationship between business and power. His story is inspiring in its demonstration of what persistence and vision can achieve. It is instructive in its lessons about strategy, execution, and leadership. And it is cautionary in its illustration of the risks and challenges that come with success and power. Whether one views Jack Ma as primarily a visionary entrepreneur, a pragmatic operator who worked within China's system, a flawed individual who made mistakes, or some combination of all these, there is no denying the significance of his impact. He helped transform how hundreds of millions of people shop, how millions of businesses operate, and how technology is deployed in service of commerce and finance. His legacy will be debated and reassessed for years to come. But whatever the final judgment, Jack Ma's story will remain an essential case study for anyone interested in entrepreneurship, technology, China's development, or the broader question of how individuals can shape the world through vision, persistence, and execution. It is a thoroughly human story of ambition, struggle, triumph, and the eternal complexities of success in a changing world.